Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Alan Barry Labucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. We're having some big movement, important movement in the market moving trends that I wanted to talk about today. I'm also going to talk about a group of companies that I think will benefit from what we're seeing in these market moving trends. I'm going to start out with the US dollar. Then I'm going to talk about gold and silver. I'm going to provide you a shopping list of companies that I follow very closely that I think will be beneficiaries of the trends that I'm seeing in the price of the US dollar, and that's bullish for gold and silver, which are also doing very well of late. The themes of the shopping list are, got a group of companies in Nevada that I'm very bullish on. I love Nevada because it's, well, it's elephant country. Lots of big mines in Nevada. It's a mining-friendly jurisdiction, one of the best jurisdictions in the world for mining and exploration, which is what I mainly cover. And another theme is I've got some deep value plays. These are companies that I think are offering tremendous opportunities because they're so significantly undervalued relative to their assets. Some of the deposit types that I follow very closely are epithermal veins. They're very important mines throughout the world. One of the best places for that is in Mexico, and I've got a group that are looking for epithermal veins. In addition, I'm also a big fan of orogenic gold deposits. Fosterville mine, when Kirkland Lake mined the Swan Zone at that orogenic gold system, it turned them into a extremely low-cost producer that produced on a bonanza grades. And this led to big margins and a money-making machine of a mine that ultimately led to them, their stock outperforming their peers quite substantially, and ultimately led to them being a buyout. I also follow CRD deposits very well, carbonate replacement deposits. These can be very exciting as well. Some of you that have followed my shows for a number of years will know that I followed early days of Arizona mining. They subsequently made an important CRD discovery that led to them being a huge winner for the investors when they were taken over. I also have some companies that are money-making machines of mines. They have very high grades, they have low costs, they have high margins, and that, turns into money-making machines of mines. So I've got some of those to talk about. The companies I'm not putting in any priority other than alphabetically, and so it's kind of A to Z of companies. This show will be quite informative, and for those that want to sort of navigate their way around the show, in the description below for this video, I'll include the themes that I talk about, the companies that I talk about, and where in the video I talk about them. I do encourage people to listen to the not just the specific companies that they're interested in, but I think you can learn a lot about the from the other companies that I follow, and also find yourself some good companies to consider putting on your own shopping list. So without further ado, let's get on to some of the trends. I'm going to do a share screen here. And on that share screen, the first place I'll go to is, let's look at the US dollar. This chart is from TradingView, and it's instructive for a lot of reasons. One of them is obviously when the US dollar is up, gold, silver, and other metals and commodities are down because they're priced in that dollar, and that those prices are the most followed globally amongst the metals investors, and by extension, the mining companies that are involved in those metals. When the US dollar is up, gold and other metal stocks, gold and other metals are down, and the stocks in those commodities are down as well. But let's look at this chart, and I want to point out a few good things, important things. Back here in around July, you see that it went through an important golden cross. This is when the 50-day moving average crosses the 200-day moving average. And as you can see, until November, when it topped out, the 50-day moving average stayed aggressively above the 200-day moving average, and both the 200-day moving average and the 50-day moving average were on a bullish direction. Another thing that I want to point out is that, as you can see, the US dollar performance was front run by the currency traders of what they were expecting, which was that the Federal Reserve would start raising interest rates after a period of about 14 years of near zero interest rates. That's important, and I'm going to talk about that as well. Why the front running is important is because I think we're seeing the same thing now since November, when it topped out at a little over 114 on the US dollar index, and then it came off. Now, I think that was the currency market front running the potential that the Federal Reserve was getting towards the end of its relentless interest rate hikes to fight the inflation. It really was an unprecedented period, and still is, that they've just been relentless in raising the interest rates. Normally, historically, the Federal Reserve would make a couple of moves and then let the data come in to see if it was having an effect. They've just been meeting after meeting raising, and for several meetings it was at 0.75% per meeting. And back in December they only did 0.5%. So I think the pivot is starting. The next phase in the pivot will be that they're concerned about the potential to over-tighten. Before the December meeting, Fed Chairman Powell was at one of these conferences, and he talked about the concerns that they will over-tighten. Then shortly after that, they came out with their December meeting. A couple of key points was that they only raised 0.5%, and also that they talked about their peak interest rate from their internal estimates being 5 to 5.5%. So they're only maybe 3 meetings away if they do a 1/4 point at each. Or maybe they do another 0.5 point and then 1/4 point, but they're probably in the first quarter of 2023 will be completely done with their interest rate campaign. I believe that they are breaking things. I think that they have over-tightened. The big argument, there's 2 big arguments for that. One is the sales of U.S. real estate has just fallen off a cliff. And so, when you've got a real estate market that was built for 14 years on near zero interest rates, when you start going up to the way that they have, and now your Fed rate is at about 4.5%, and the mortgage rates are substantially higher than that. Without a doubt, it's going to affect the real estate market. Another important indicator that they have overdone it is the yield curves on the U.S. debt. It doesn't matter which duration you look at, they're all inverting. And that is a remarkably accurate indicator of future recessions. So they seem to be on a relentless path to causing a recession. They caused the inflation. They had a very big impact on the inflation. If you have near zero interest rates for 14 years, it's going to create a lot of speculation. Assets go up, things cost more, and you break things. They're breaking they've already broken the U.S. Real estate market, and they're in the process of breaking the U.S. economy, which looks to be going into a recession in 2023. Another instructive point that I would like to make is that if you watch the direction of the 50-day moving average, you can see that it has dropped off a cliff. And then right here, it went through a death cross in the early trading of 2023. What happens in the first week of a new year has an impact on the rest of the year. It's called the January effect. It has been a very good indicator of the direction of assets. How they start the year can have a indicator of where they'll go throughout the year. And the U.S. dollar is off to a very bearish January effect. The reason that this happens is that institutional investors tend at the end of a year and the start of a new year to look at things from a more of a big picture yearly perspective, and subsequently they position themselves based on that year outlook. And so what they're getting rid of in January is an indication that they're bearish for that asset class in the coming year. And subsequently, when things are in a strong January, which is what I'm going to talk about next, assets that are in a strong January tend to have a strong year. So the US dollar index and its trading pattern tells us a lot. And ultimately what it's telling us is that after a death cross, much like when you see a golden cross like you did here, the 50-day moving average stayed above the 200-day, and the 200-day and the 50-day were going up in a bullish pattern. And what you reverse that, and what you would tend to see is that the 50-day stays well below the 200-day after a death cross, and both the 200-day and the 50-day move in a bearish direction. And this is a very steep drop through that to go to that death cross. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about gold. And as you can see here, this is the gold chart. And it went through a death cross in July of this year, or of 2022, and then bottomed out in September, October, November, then had a big breakout where the price moved well above the 50-day moving average. Shortly thereafter, it moved above the 200-day moving average. It's now aggressively above the 200-day and the 50-day moving average, over $110 above those two trends. And as of today, It's right at a golden cross. What I'm expecting to see is that it's already off to a very strong January effect, and it's going through a golden cross. And I think what you're going to see is that 50-day, look at the trajectory of that 50-day, it's very similar to the angle of the drop of the 50-day in the US dollar. These are not coincidences. Where the US dollar goes often goes gold, and where gold goes often goes the rest of the metals, and even more aggressively the gold stocks. And so what I'm expecting for 2023 is that we go through that golden cross, and that the 50-day moving average stays for 2023 well above the 200-day moving average, and that both of them point in the bullish direction, and they have an exceptional year. Okay, so now I'm going to move over to silver. And as silver often does, it will outperform on the way down, and it will outperform on the way up. And so as you can see here, it was following the same path as the US dollar. It started to correct significantly before the gold price, and had its death cross before the price of gold. And as it often does, it is ahead of the game. It's moving up in the same direction as gold, and it has gone through its golden cross ahead of gold, and it is now well above the 200-day moving average, and both the 200-day moving average is on the verge of getting more bullish. So much like the price of gold, I expect silver to see the year where the 50-day moving average stays well above the 200-day moving average, and both the 200-day moving average and the 50-day moving average move in the same direction. This is very bullish for gold stocks and silver stocks, and that's what I'm going to focus this report on. I'm going to go back to the gold chart here while I talk about the themes that I'm going to talk about in this show. As I mentioned earlier, Nevada, great place to be looking for gold mines, great place to be mining gold deposits, one of the best jurisdictions long-term to be exploring and mining. So I've got a group of companies that are focused in Nevada, and I think that they will benefit from a stronger market for the price of gold, stronger market for the price of gold stocks. So that will be a key catalyst. But then the companies that I follow also are have excellent news flow and have plenty of catalysts on their own to move their own valuation up. So this is the kind of thing that makes for gold and silver stocks that significantly outperform their peers. I'm also going to be bringing you a group of deep value plays. Why I think these are so important is they are turnaround stories, if you will, where the price of the assets that they have in the ground is being significantly discounted on a historical basis. And therefore, as you get into a more bullish market, these are the kind of assets that investors that come into the space will take a close look at, because they're coming from such an oversold position. And you know, as things get more bullish, they tend to get significantly more bullish, and that's the kind of thing that attracts investor attention. As I mentioned, I follow epithermal vein systems very closely. I live in Mexico, and almost all of the big mines here in Mexico for silver are epithermal veins. Some of particular note include companies like MAG Silver that have made important discoveries that are now in production, and they're very low-cost producers and high grades, and that makes for very profitable mining. And that's why I think they're so important. I've got a group of companies. I got some companies that are involved in epithermal vein systems. Another kind of gold system that I'm very bullish on is orogenic gold systems. As I mentioned earlier, when Kirkland Lake found and mined the Swan Zone, I turned them into one of the lowest cost producers of gold in the business. And that made them one of the best performing gold stocks and ultimately led to them being taken over. You know, at I think it was over $10 billion US in the takeover. So these kind of deposits can be company makers. And the companies that I'm following have very small valuations, but are at crucial points in the evolution of exploring an orogenic gold system. So I've got some of those for you. CRDs, as I mentioned, Arizona Mining was a tremendous performer in the last decade. They found an important CRD, and ultimately that led them to be an exceptional performer for the shareholders, and ultimately got them a big checks when the company got bought out. I was fortunate enough to talk about the company when they were about a 50-cent stock. So I'm pretty knowledgeable about these kind of systems, and I've got some companies that are actually finding what looks like the potential of even better CRD systems than what Arizona Mining found. So got some of those for you. Money-making machines of mines, I've got some of those for you as well. And even though they have money-making machines of mines, they still are at valuations that suggest that you know, investors can do very well owning these companies for a long period of time. And for the less or the more risk-adverse investor that wants exposure to gold or silver, these are a very good way for you to have exposure to those kind of assets. All righty, let's get on to the companies. The first company, again, I'm doing this in alphabetical order. So the first company that I'm going to talk about is the company where I'm the CEO and a large shareholder, Advanced Lithium. As you can see, we started to get punished back here and have been basing ever since. The reason for the punishment is that we have a group of assets in Mexico, lithium salars or salt lakes. And when the Mexican government talked about their efforts to create a national lithium company, people hear that and they hear nationalization and they run for the exits. And that has created a pretty good opportunity for investors because before we even got into lithium, we were very involved with gold and silver in Mexico. And we also had 3 royalties in Kenya. And I spoke with a friend of mine who runs a royalty company, and they were interested in acquiring those royalties. We worked out a deal where they paid us $120,000 US, and they had 100% interest in a project called Serape, which is in Sonora, Mexico. And what makes this quite unique is that it's a 55 square kilometer property. So it's very big. It has 2 big epithermal veins on it. One is 5 kilometers long. One is 2 kilometers. They've seen very minimal drilling. The 1 kilometer vein has only seen 1 historical hole. The 5 kilometer vein has only seen exploration on 200 meters of a 5,000 meter epithermal vein. It's also important to note that this vein has several outcrops of the epithermal vein. So it's coming up in many spots along the vein. Another important factor is it sits right beside the Las Chispas mine that is owned by SilverCrest. SilverCrest recently in November went into full commercial production at Las Chispas. They're mining silver for about $6.88 an ounce, and they're mining at a grade of 700 grams per ton of silver from an epithermal vein. So we're in the same kind of rocks, same kind of geological structural regime, and we have large underexplored epithermal veins. To their immediate south is the Ermitaño mine. And that's important for us because Ermitaño, the discovery of Ermitaño started out as an outcrop of an epithermal vein. They drilled 150 meters below it and hit excellent grades, and ultimately continued their exploration. Showed that it was a big high-grade mine in the making. They made it into a mine, and now it is the best performing mine that is owned by First Majestic. So we're in a tremendously exciting area. We have the same kind of geological story, same kind of vein system as at First Majestic, as well as at Las Chispas, and just got to send a quick message here. Sorry, we're in the same kind of epithermal vein cluster, and we plan on not reinventing the wheel. We're going to follow the same game plan as First Majestic followed to make the discovery at the Ermitaño mine. They had an outcrop. They drilled 150 meters below it, found high grade, and the rest is history. So we have multiple outcrops of gold, of epithermal veins. Those epithermal veins have been surface sampled, shows widespread gold and silver mineralization. And in these epithermal vein systems, you have to get down to the right depth. It's called the boiling zone of an epithermal vein. And we mean to show the public the images of the various different outcrops of the epithermal vein, and then drill underneath those about 150, 200 meters below the outcrops and try to find the boiling zone and boiling zones, and then follow that up with future drilling. So I'm very excited about Serape. I think because of what's went on with our lithium that we've been punished. We currently only have about a $2 million valuation. I would make the argument that if I were today to go out and try to find a large land package near important mines for gold and silver, and do a deal on that I would have to pay big cash payments. I would also have to commit to very large annual expenditures, and I would be left with probably only 50% of the project, and I would probably have to pay significantly more than our current valuation for that kind of opportunity. So the replacement costs of our Serape project probably are, one could easily make an argument that it's significantly below what it would cost us to get a lesser position. So I'm very excited about we're a diversified company. We have lithium, we have gold and silver, and we're working to get the story out about Serape. and get drilling on it. So there's the story on Advance Lithium, where I'm the CEO and a large shareholder. The next company up is Amex. Amex Exploration was one of my picks as far as a tax loss selling company. You know, back here they were trading very cheaply considering what they have. Then in early January, they made a significant breakout. They have been an excellent pick in my tax loss selling season picks. And that often happens, you know, investors, they're positioning themselves for tax purposes at that time of the year, not so much for fundamental purposes. And that gives investors an opportunity that in late December, they can buy into these companies when they're very oversold, and often see a significant jump in the price when you get into January. And that's exactly what's happened with Amex. But they're not just a buy for me because of the tax loss selling season. I'm very positive about their what they found in Quebec at their Perron project. They have an orogenic gold system. The key as part of that system is their high grade zone. The high grade zone starts at near surface and continues down to over 1,000 meters. That's right around the range that the Swan Zone was found in Fosterville. And why that happens is the deeper you go, the closer you are to the heat engine that caused the fluids with bearing gold to make their way up closer to surface. What also makes that high-grade zone quite spectacular is the phenomenal continuity of the high grade. When you're looking at a high-grade deposit, you can't have sporadic distribution of the high grade because there's too much dilution in between the high grade hits, and you got to process that rock while you're going towards the high grade, and therefore it makes for a money losing mine, even though it has high grade. What you really need is continuity of the high grade. People in the industry often say grade is king. No, I think continuity is king, because that leads to a very profitable mine. And I have all the confidence in the world that at their Perron project, at the high grade zone, that they have a future mine in the making. And so that's just one project in a group of discoveries that they've made on the project. They also have, right beside the high grade zone is their Denise zone, and that's an open pit target that has, for an open pit target, has very high grade as well. And another reason that one reason that it's important is that's where they could start their mining operations. The second reason that it's important is it gives them easy access to that high-grade zone because they're right beside each other. Important from a geological exploration perspective is that there's two key faults. One is called Perron and one is called Normatel. And in between them is the Beaupré block. And the way that I explain this is, think about two sides of a ship. And in this case, it looks like both sides of the ship are dipping towards each other. And that is a good place as you go deeper to look for where things compress, the veins compress, and also the grade compresses into very high grades in these orogenic gold systems. And so they also, in close proximity to those two deposits, they found other satellite deposits in close proximity, which suggests that they're all coming from the same gold mineralizing system. the gold is following the same structural path. It's going into the same package of rocks and likely has a, comes together at depth. If you follow those two faults to the east, not even very far from the known zones, you run into where it really pinches down tightly. And that is also a good place to look for the source of where all this gold is coming from. And recently they announced that they are planning a series of holes in that eastern extension of this geological package of rocks, and where two faults come together. I'm very bullish. They've got lots of catalysts ahead of them. Amex Exploration is a very undervalued situation. It's trending up nicely now. Catalyst will be the price of gold getting stronger, more investors looking at gold stocks, and they've got many catalysts ahead of them in the near term. All righty, let's move to the next company. Again, this is all alphabetical. The next company is Blackrock Silver. Blackrock Silver is another of my picks for the tax loss selling. As you can see, they got very cheap in December. They've come significantly up from there. They've traded well through their 50-day moving average. The 50-day moving average looks like it's on the verge of bending upwards and heading towards a golden cross. The assets that I'm very bullish on are threefold. One of them is their lithium project, which they've recently done a deal with another company that will come in and advance that project. There's their other project that I interviewed their CEO and invited him to become a sponsor of my show so that I could do a series of interviews with them and follow the company closely. Andrew Pollard, who kindly took me up on the offer to be a show sponsor, came on. And the reason that I had asked them at that time is they had just put out some great news from their Silver Cloud project. Silver Cloud is a project that actually they got started on, and then they got a new project in Tonopah, Mexico, or Tonopah, that has turned out to be a tremendous asset, and that kind of put their attention on Tonopah. But then in late 2022, they kind of threw some Hail Mary passes at Silver Cloud, and one of the holes just hit phenomenal stuff. It hit a epithermal vein that was in bonanza grades for both gold and silver. It was significantly away from a significant distance away from their past drilling. It is close to a big fault. And those are the kind of cracks that allow those fluids to make their way to surface. And now they've got a great hole to follow up on. I think they've got something very serious at their Silver Cloud in that vein that they recently tagged. And I think you'll see some a significant amount of work on that project this year. But the big driver, and why I also picked them as a deep value play, is their Tonopah project. At Tonopah, they have a resource, a very significant resource of silver. What makes it special is that in the maiden resource, they had a good amount of silver, but it also had a grade of around 450 grams per ton silver. In the interview that I did with Andrew Pollard, you can find it on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News. We talked about the similarities that it has to SilverCrest's Las Chispas mine in Mexico, in that when SilverCrest came out with its first maiden resource, it had a similar size, and the grade is actually better at the Tonopah project that Blackrock is developing. So, that I think has a bright future to grow that resource. In fact, they've done a bunch of drilling that has significantly increased the footprint of the resource, and a lot of that is pending. So they've got a lot of news to come out soon. Andrew also pointed out that what really was the game changer for SilverCrest is they're not going to reinvent the wheel. They're going to follow the same path. As SilverCrest increased the size of their resource, it was through focusing on the high-grade portions of their epithermal vein and system. And Blackrock is intending to do the exact same thing. They're growing the resource. They're going to focus in on the high-grade portions of that. That's a great way to grow your ounces in the ground and also your grade. I see a lot of great things ahead for Tonopah, and I believe that it makes them a deep value play. So catalyst-rich company, really cheap valuation, and I think it will also benefit from stronger prices for gold and silver. Another good one for you to take a look at. Okay, now we're going to go to a new sponsor of my shows, which is a company called Dynasty Gold. Really impressive stuff. They announced here was some bonanza grades in an orogenic gold system. I call these jewelry box hits. You know, the Swan Zone at the Fosterville mine for Kirkland Lake was a jewelry box that just had fabulous grades and low costs. And I think that they are Dynasty Gold is now at a seminal moment for the exploration of an orogenic gold system. They got a large area that suggests that orogenic system goes very deep, and now they're tagging into jewelry box hits, and that's is an important juncture in the exploration of an orogenic gold system. Now that they're a newly minted sponsor of my shows, I'm planning to get one of their key technical people, Roman, on the show to do an interview early next week. And he's a pretty impressive guy. He's was inducted into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame in 2009. So they've got a great asset, a strong team, and they still have even though they've moved up significantly after making that announcement, they still have a very cheap valuation, about $14 million Canadian. And yet they're at an important juncture for the exploration of an orogenic gold system. So I'm very optimistic about this company. I'm super happy that they decided to become a sponsor, because what I can do for sponsors is that I'm able to do a series of interviews when they have important news out. I also follow those companies very closely, so I do a lot of homework on them, and therefore I talk about them lots in my sector reports. And I think this company has a hell of a strong future ahead of it. It's just getting warmed up now, and I believe that we're going to be able to follow the evolution of this company through a series of interviews. And I'm very optimistic about that whole scenario. So Dynasty Gold is another one that, you know, is breaking out significantly. It's well above its 50-day moving average, well above its 200-day moving average, and it's only a few days away from a golden cross. I think they'll be catalyst rich throughout the 2023. So that's another one you want to take a look at. Okay, next up is Galantas. Galantas Gold is another in my series of companies that are exploring orogenic gold systems. They're very undervalued at this point, deep value play for me. I just think this is tremendously oversold here. And yet the company is got a lot of catalysts ahead of it. First of all, they're in an orogenic gold system. I believe that they're also at a seminal moment where they have a network of dilation zones, and these dilation zones are where the rock opens up and allows those metals-bearing fluids with high-grade gold to make their way up to surface. And the depth potential at an orogenic gold system is the whole story. As I mentioned earlier, as you go deeper, you're getting closer to the heat engine that is the source of where all that high-grade gold has come from. And also exciting about this project is they've got a series of veins that are in tight, close proximity to each other. And then those zones are very close to a regional deep crack in the earth. And those deep cracks are what allow the fluids to make their way up to surface. And I think as they move closer to that, deeper and closer to that big crack in the earth, that's going to unlock this story. And I think they're very cheap. And I'm looking forward to future interviews with them because one, I think they've got the ability to make a lot of news. And secondly, that I think that news will be the catalyst to move them to a much better valuation. And another catalyst, of course, as I mentioned earlier, will be gold getting stronger. So Galantas Gold is another one for you to take a look at. Okay, Golden Lake Exploration is a company in Nevada. They have found a high-grade CRD with silver, lead, zinc, which is your metals that you find in a carbonate replacement deposit. And secondly, they've also have an overprint of high-grade gold. So these are two separate mineralizing events that happened at different times, yet they followed the same faulting and then got into the same rock packages, and therefore you have a high-grade CRD with an overprint of bonanza grades of gold. This is a very exciting reason, not just for what Golden Lake has, including their cheap valuation and a stronger stock chart, but their neighbors to the immediate north, Paycore, which I'm going to talk about later, and i-80 Gold have also found these CRDs with the silver, lead, and zinc, as well as an overprint of bonanza grade gold. So this is a very exciting region that Little Golden Lake Exploration is involved with. And recently I did an interview with Don Hoy, who's the VP Exploration, and we talked about this project and his plans to move it forward. And I recommend you check out that interview on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News. All right, the next company is HighGold. HighGold was a pick that I made in my tax loss selling picks. As you can see, it was very cheap here and the end of the tax loss selling season. And then in January, it's broken out quite significantly, trading well above its 50-day moving average, and now also trading above its 200-day moving average. But not only did I pick them as in my tax loss selling picks, I also had talked about them as a deep value play in my year in review for 2022 report. And why I state that case is if you look at the asset, their key asset, which is the JT deposit, it has a resource of over 1 million ounces of gold with an average grade of about 9.25 grams per ton gold. Those are very difficult kind of things to find in the gold mining space. There's not a lot of them. And especially that it looks like as they go deeper, let's say the zone is, the JT deposit is here, And as it goes deeper, it looks to get higher grade and bigger. So I think that that has the potential of being a 2 to 5 million ounce gold target. But equally, or well, as exciting for me is their Ellis zone, which is 4,000 meters away from the JT deposit, where they've hit bonanza grade gold, like right off the charts, 6 meters of about 500 and some grams per ton of gold, and kilos of silver. You know, that's makes it one of the best holes found anywhere in the world. And then they went in there this past drilling season and they've expanded that zone. They've hit a excellent continuity. It looks, and what also makes it exciting is that it's right at surface. So you're looking at something that would be an open pit target with several orders of magnitude the grade of most gold deposits that are open pit mined throughout the world these days. So Ellis zone, they got two really exciting, they got an exciting resource that makes them a deep value play. They've got a new discovery that looks like it will become a million ounce type target or more, a very high grade open pittable material. And they got plenty of catalysts as well. So I think that this is another company that will benefit from a stronger market for gold and all the catalysts that they have coming out. i-80 Gold is one of my favorite gold mining companies. They have on their hands two world-class gold deposits. One is at Granite Creek, where they've been drilling away at their South Pacific zone. That zone is now over 700 meters in strike length. It's got a significant vertical dimensions to it. It's wide open as they go along strike to the north and at depth. As they go deeper, the grades are increasing. As you go a little further to the north in the same structural regime and the same kind of rocks, you run into the Turquoise Ridge deposit, which is a 25 million ounce gold deposit. So they're in the immediate vicinity of an elephant. They're in the same kind of rocks. They're getting the same kind of grade. They're getting the, and it looks like they've got a big resource there. Then over at their Ruby Hill project to the west side of the Archimedes pit, which was mined in the past by either Barrick or Newmont. It escapes me at the moment, but they drilled to the west of the old pit and deeper, and they found the Ruby Deeps deposit. And that is a very thick, high-grade underground bulk mining kind of opportunity with excellent continuity of the high grade. Then they drilled up above that and they found their 426 zone. And the 426 zone is got a lot of oxide material in it and a very high grade and good continuity. And it is right at the bottom of the west side of the Archimedes pit. So it gives them easy access to very profitable rock to mine, which will then lead them down to the Ruby Deeps deposit because they're kind of a continuum. You've got the west side of the pit, right below it is the 426 zone, right below it is the Ruby Deeps. So as I said, they've got two world-class gold deposits on their hands, but then they drilled to the south of the Archimedes pit, and they announced a spectacular hole here in November with very high value in situ metals values in the rock at their CRD discovery to the south of the Archimedes pit. Just off the charts grades as far as silver, lead, zinc, and an overprint of bonanza grade gold. And if you look at apples to apples comparisons to CRDs throughout the world, this is one of the highest grade CRDs you're going to find anywhere in the world. And that's what drove the stock up quite dramatically to trade well above its 50-day moving average had a golden cross in early December, is now trading well above the 50-day and significant, almost a double from the 200-day. And it looks like the 200-day is about to take a move towards the upwards direction. And they, again, are a catalyst-rich company that's benefiting from a stronger market for gold. And I think that you're going to see exceptional performance out of i-80 Gold in 2023. You've already seen them end the year in a very bullish trend, start the year in a very bullish trend, and I think they're going to end the year in 2023 in a very bullish trend. Alrighty, so the next company I want to talk about is McEwen Mining. I just did an interview earlier this week with a couple days ago with Rob McEwen, and oh, sorry, I got the wrong chart there. And Rob and I talked about. Rob's very tuned into what's happening in the gold and copper markets, and we talked about those market moving events in our interview yesterday or the day before. Just go to my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, or on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. You'll find that interview. I interviewed them back here sometime when they were about, well, half the price or a little less than half the price they are currently, describing why the reasons that I believe they were undervalued, and talking to Rob McEwen about the reasons he believed the company was undervalued. But as you can see, they broke out quite significantly in November. They went through a golden cross in late December. They're trading well above the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average. It looks like the 200-day moving average is about to turn upwards into the bullish direction, and you've already got the 50-day moving average in a bullish direction. Rob was very kind to spend time with us on that interview, discussing the catalysts and the things that they're working on their copper project in Argentina, as well as their efforts to bring down their cost of production of gold at their gold mines and also increase the grade. And I think that the combination of the turnaround on their gold mining operations and the enthusiasm for copper is why this stock has moved up so aggressively from its August lows. And even though it has moved up aggressively, I still believe that the company is very undervalued, because at their copper mine, they've got a top 10 largest undeveloped copper mines in the world that is in their preliminary economic assessment shows that it's in the lowest quartile of operational costs. So, that makes for the kind of mine that any copper mining company would like to get its hands on. And I think it makes for a great future as they plan on spinning out the copper project into McEwen Copper. McEwen Mining will maintain a 68% interest in McEwen Copper. And with what's also going on at their turnaround of their gold operations, I think this makes for a hell of a 1-2 punch. And I invite you to go check out that interview I did with Rob McEwen to get even more insights into why it looks to be significantly undervalued, yet has tremendous catalysts going forward to unlock shareholder value. Another interview I did earlier this week is with a company called Orogen Royalties. OGN is their stock symbol. As you can see, they're benefiting from a stronger market for gold and some good news from one of their assets. And also that they are now getting a stream of cash payments from the Ermitaño mine, where they own a 2% royalty. So they're kind of transitioning from a company that had a bunch of royalties, but they were moving those projects forward. And now the one project, Ermitaño, is sending them lots of cash now. And secondly, they've got another flagship project at their Silicon project in Nevada. That one's being operated by Anglo Gold Ashanti. And Anglo Gold has done a preliminary, or their first maiden resource, showing that the property is a 3.4 million ounce gold resource in the maiden resource. That's very impressive. It's in the oxides. It's hard to find oxide deposits in Nevada because the region has been so picked over the past 40 or 50 years for the near surface oxide deposits. And yet, they found one that looks to be very, very big, and Orogen Royalties owns a 1% royalty on that. Another reason I like the company a lot is I worked with the CEO of the company, Patty Nickel, for many years with a geological consulting firm. His uncle was the founder of that, and his uncle, Bob Darney, who sadly is no longer with us, was an important mentor for both Patty and myself. And Patty and I were able to get together and do a deal on the Kenya royalties that I had in Advanced Lithium. And they gave us the Serape project, 100% interest in Serape that I talked about earlier in the show. And they maintain a 1.5% royalty on that. I'm hopeful that we become one of their future flagships. They've also got a bunch of other projects and partnerships on a series of projects that all are high potential projects that could become future royalties for them. And another good housekeeping seal of approval is that a much larger royalty company in Altius Minerals owns about 16.5% of Orogen Royalties. So they've got a big royalty company that owns a big chunk of them, and that's a testament to the team that Patty has around him and the quality of the assets that they have. I only follow one royalty company. It's Orogen Royalties. And I'm very optimistic about their future now that they're making that transition to a cash flowing royalty company with a pipeline of great projects that can, keep that ball rolling, if you will. So there's the Orogen Royalties story. The next company I want to talk about is Orla Mining. Orla is owns what I believe is a cash-making machine of a oxide gold deposit in the state of Zacatecas, Mexico, that in early November, right around here, they announced that it's in full commercial production. They started the ramp up back here, which got the stock optimistic. It's significantly above that 52-week low. And then here they started full commercial production, and the stock has significantly broken out. It is now aggressively above the 50-day moving average, went through a golden cross right here, and they're at an important inflection point for a company that is now a gold mining company that mines gold at one of the lowest costs in the industry. And I believe they've got a cash-making machine of an asset here and a pipeline of other assets that could be future mines. So I think that for the more risk-adverse investor but also wants exposure to a gold mining asset, Orla Mining would do you very well to do your homework on them. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to Paycore. Paycore is a sponsor of my show. They have the project right beside. They only been trading since April of 2022. They have the project right beside I-80 Gold, which I talked about earlier, and on their other side is Golden Lake Exploration that I talked about earlier. All three of these companies have high-grade CRDs with your gold, your silver, your lead, and your zinc. and an overprint of bonanza grade gold, making for very high rock values. And they had a good announcement out here. Stock moved aggressively above its 50-day moving average. The 50-day moving average is on a very bullish trajectory. They have catalysts. I think that they've got a few catalysts. One is gold getting stronger. Second is that i-80 Gold is, if they keep putting out the kind of news that I foresee them to do on their CRD next door, is also beneficial for Paycore. And thirdly, they've got their own news generating ability. And so Paycore is part of what I think is becoming one of the most important regions in all of Nevada due to these high-grade CRDs with the high-grade gold overprint. And I think they've got a tremendous future ahead of them. And they are a sponsor of my website, so I've done a bunch of interviews with them. And you can find them on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News. And check out the interviews that I've done with them. It'll help you do your homework on the company. Okay, Sokoman Minerals is the next company, and Sokoman is an orogenic gold exploration company that's at an important inflection point or juncture for the exploration of an orogenic gold system. Back here, they announced that they hit an exceptional intersection over, you're talking 30 meters of high grade with bonanza grades included inside of that. I call what they found the first jewelry box on the property. The model of what they're at now on what they call their 463 zone is that it's part of there was an eastern trend to the gold that they were drilling close to surface and then following. When they got down to about the 350 meter level, they hit this jewelry box hit. Then they did they had a camera go down the drill hole, and that gives them a view of what's happening as they move to depth. Then they had a very prominent structural geologist look at it, and he identified that it looks like there's another trend coming up from an opposite direction. And that's an exact model of what the Swan Zone looks like at Fosterville. Then they drilled another hole into it in December into that jewelry box. Those results are pending. I think in 2023, they're going to show that they've got something that looks like a Swan Zone at the Fosterville mine. There are only 2 holes into it, but I really like what I see. And as you can see in the stock, it's had a nice trend of higher lows. Now it's trading above its 50-day and 200-day and looks like it's only within maybe 10 days from going through a golden cross. Some of the pending news is they've got assay results coming from their 505 hole, which was the second hole into this jewelry box that they've hit. And then they're probably only a couple days away from drilling more holes into that jewelry box. So they got a lot of catalysts. They're at an important juncture for the exploration of an orogenic gold system. And I think they're close to being off to the races. Okay, I've only got a few companies left, and I'm running out of time here because I have a meeting to go to. So let's try to deal with these as quickly as possible. SilverCrest, as I talked about earlier when mentioning my own company, Advanced Gold, because we have a 55 square kilometer property right beside SilverCrest, but SilverCrest is a pick because they have recently gone into full commercial production at their Las Chispas mine. And they're mining at a grade or at a cost of about $6.88 per ounce of silver produced. and the grade is over 700 grams per ton of silver. So they've got just a cash-making machine that's in the early days of being a cash-making machine. And as you can see here, they bottomed out in October, had a higher low in early November, a much higher low here in December. The trend is now they're trading above the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average, and they're about 2 or 3 days away from a golden cross. And because they're so early in their production, as they have quarterly reports out that shows the bottom line, how much of a cash-making machine this is, I think they've got a lot of blue sky ahead of them. SilverCrest is what I consider a money-making machine of a mine. For investors that want exposure to gold and silver, but have less risk, SilverCrest is an ideal company for you. I think it will perform very well in 2023. They've got something very special at their Las Chispas mine, and I'm very bullish on the company. All right, Timberline. Timberline is also in Nevada. They're also in that Eureka trend. It goes i-80 Gold, Paycore, Golden Lake, then Timberline. Timberline has a resource that they're gold resource that they're expanding on. They've got a lot of results pending from that project. It bottomed in September and November. It's now trading right on its 50-day moving average, but the 50-day moving average is starting to move up, and it looks like it's going to get to a golden cross in the next couple of weeks, sometime in January. And they've got a lot of pending news coming out from the drilling that they did over the last 3 or 4 months. What really excites me about the resource is right beside the resource is this big geophysical anomaly. And as you follow the resource expansion to the east, it brings you closer to that big geophysical anomaly. You look at all the structures and all the geological rock packages, and they're all pointing towards that big geophysical anomaly being the source of where the resource came from. And that's a very exciting situation. They also have a lot of historical mining on their property for CRDs, so it's ripe to make a CRD discovery. In fact, I think they recently made an announcement that suggests to me that they may have clipped the edge of a CRD. And so they've got they got a big land package in that Eureka district. In fact, the largest land package in Eureka. They've got a lot of good things on their projects, a ton of targets, a ton of pending assays, and I think they're headed towards a golden cross this month of January. And stay tuned for more interviews that I'll be doing with their CEO and their news. I'll be talking about that as well. Okay. Last but certainly not least, because they have the name Walker River Resources, is the only reason they're last, has recently gone through a pretty important change in direction here in December, where they moved up quite aggressively. They're only about 2 or 3 days away from a golden cross. They're trading aggressively above their 50-day moving average and their 200-day moving average. It looks like a golden cross will be followed by the 200-day and the 50-day moving upwards. What's caused this enthusiasm of late is they drilled 2 targets that have pending assay results. One is their Pikes Peak target. This is a porphyry target. In these gold systems, that's the heat engine that brings those high-grade gold-bearing fluids to the surface. Then they follow along these faults, these cracks in the earth, and that's what they've done at Lapon Canyon, the Lapon Mountain project. At Lapon Mountain, they've drilled a very wide area, about 600 meters from side to side, with widespread high-grade gold mineralization. Then from top to bottom, it has about 800 meters of distribution of high-grade gold. And there's also a big alteration zone. So when those fluids that are carrying the high-grade gold interact with the country rock, it chemically alters that country rock. And so you can see this big alteration package and then a big structural corridor of faulting. So it's got all the earmarks of a very big and powerful high-grade gold mineralizing system. But until recently, what kind of hampered them to prove that it has high-grade continuity is they were drilling from the side of the mountain. And when you're drilling from a side of a mountain, it makes it difficult to follow and understand the three dimensions of the gold mineralizing system. Then last year, they made an important discovery at the top of the mountain that's called the hotspot zone. Why that's important is it kind of gives you the furthest extension of this mineralizing system that also had high-grade gold, which leads me to believe that the entire system is connected into continuity, and it is a big high-grade gold mineralizing system. Secondly, they were able to go on top of the mountain where the mountain flattens out and drill a series of vertical holes into that hotspot zone. And those results are pending as we speak, and they could come out at any time. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing this optimism in the price of the stock. But the big picture for me is I think they could have market-moving news from that drilling on the top of the mountain. But equally as important is it will allow them to get a better understanding of how the gold system reacts at depth and I believe has continuity and a big gold mineralizing system of high-grade gold. And by drilling at the top, you can get enough geological information to create a three-dimensional model of what that gold system is doing as it goes deeper down the mountain. And then when you drill from the side of the mountain, you have much more predictability of tapping into that 3D model of the entire system. So it's an exciting story. It's in Nevada. I like all the pending news that they have. They're also a sponsor of my website, so I've done a bunch of interviews with Michelle David, who runs the company, and I'm expecting to do a lot more in the future. I think they've got some great catalysts ahead of them. The market is already anticipating that they have good news, and I like what I see as far as Walker River Resources is concerned. So there you go, folks. That's my reasons for being optimistic on gold and gold stocks. My reasons, my themes of what I follow, and a shopping list of companies. Now, I don't want you running out and buying all these stocks because I talked about them. I think it's important for you to do your homework and understand why you like the companies. And I think a well-informed investor makes less emotional decisions based on day-to-day activity in the stock price. And good place. A lot of these companies are sponsors of my shows, so I do a lot of interviews with them. I talk about them in my sector reports. Good place to find all that is on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, and also on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. And I encourage you to do that homework because my shows are only for research purposes. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisors and also do your homework. The main reason is it's important for you to understand what you're investing in so you are more likely to make intelligent decisions, not emotional decisions based on the day-to-day activity in a stock, because they can fluctuate quite dramatically for these small companies. But if you know what you're investing in, you have a lot better chance of taking advantage of the cheap when they're on sale and holding them till they pay you off in a big way. On that note, have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.